first of all, Neville Gardner, right? A good friend of mine runs the St. Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick in County Down in Northern Ireland. And the St. Patrick's Centre basically is an interpretation centre that tells the story of the life of St. Patrick. And he actually is buried in the graveyard at the cathedral just up above where the centre is. And so, so Dr. Tim Campbell, he's a historian. He basically runs that centre, and he and I have been friends for a lot of years. So I grew up in a wee village called Lambeg, about 15, 20 miles from Downpatrick. And anyway, after I was living in America for a while and had opened Donegal Square and gotten Celtic Classic Festival started, Dr. Tim and I became friends, and we did a bunch of stuff cooperatively. And they have a really nice shop in the St. Patrick's Centre and a nice restaurant. I guess Joe and Terry and his team, Fergus, they became friends with Dr. Tim because when they decided to write the book, they obviously went up to the graveyard and to get a bit of background on it. So, Joe.
That's great. Thanks for the introduction, Neville. I was actually talking to our mutual friend, Tim, earlier on this afternoon. So he's in good form. He was hoping to join us this evening, but wasn't sure if he could make it. So we can send him the video afterwards. Yeah, so I suppose just to give a little background on Terry McCoy. He's the chef, but the book is a collaboration between myself, Terry, and another colleague of ours, Fergus Gannon. And we live in a little place called Skerries, which is a coastal village about a half an hour outside Dublin City on the coast. And our interest in St. Patrick is long held because there's an island that we can see off the coast here called St. Patrick's Island. And I'll let Terry talk a little bit more about it later on. But St. Patrick's Island is purportedly where St. Patrick returned to Ireland when he came back to Christianize the natives. And the story goes that he landed there. The prevailing winds and tides sent him north to Strangford Lough, and he ended up in Saul in Downpatrick. So that's how the story goes. So our area has a very deep connection with St. Patrick. As I said, Terry is the chef, and where this project probably started was on a boat trip that I took with Terry and a bunch of other people to see the Open Golf Championship in, I believe, 2016 in Troon. So we went on Terry's yacht, and there was Terry and a number of other really fabulous chefs. And I was just fascinated by the fact that as they were cooking breakfast, they were competing with each other as to what they could cook for lunch, and same continued at lunchtime and same continued at dinner time. And we paid for almost nothing. We met fishermen who gave us lobsters or gave us something in exchange. We exchanged whiskey for lobster or whatever it was. And so I suppose the idea of the book probably goes back to then, where, and the food, by the way, that we ate on that trip was just quite incredible, really stunning. And Terry has had a lifelong passion for food and a lifelong talent for food. So that's kind of the I suppose where the story of the book started. When we decided on the theme for St. Patrick, because we've been talking about writing something for a while, and I remember when we settled on St. Patrick as a theme because of, the Skerries connection, and obviously St. Patrick being, the patron saint of Ireland, etc., etc. And I thought two things. I thought, great, we've got a 1600-year head start in marketing because St. Patrick has been out around the globe, creating our own special day. But I also thought simultaneously, the food is going to be pretty grim because I'm not so sure how fancy the food was in 5th century Ireland. And to our pleasant surprise, the more we researched the book and the era and the period, the more we realized that the food actually on offer was healthy, it was high in energy values, it was very nutritious. Because St. Patrick was of Roman stock, that meant that we could sort of explore some of that Mediterranean diet as well. And to be honest, what we ended up realizing pretty quickly into the project was that the ingredients and methodology actually hadn't changed an awful lot. The big thing that's changed in modern day cooking is the kind of preservation of food and the processing of food. And again, Terry will talk a little bit more about that in a little while. So it's kind of just a little bit of background to the book. So it's we're all in businesses together and separately. this kind of started on a boat trip to Scotland. We've ended up with this book that we're very proud of and that we're in the, I suppose, early stages of starting to promote. And this evening, Terry has chosen a few things to sort of cook and demonstrate and just talk about, because the recipes are his, and the recipes come from his deep knowledge of cooking. So, Terry, I believe you have selected the pork medallions recipe from the book on page 46 to demonstrate. So, will I hand over to you, Terry? Do you want me to shut up, or do you want me to keep going?
But of course, one of the reasons why I was so interested in Patrick, because I knew about Church Island of Skerries, and it was known as Patrick's Island, or Inish Pádraig. And of course, the locals in Skerries were very embarrassed about the legend of St. Patrick, because it's reputed that while he was on the island and he left and went south towards Donabate, and while he was away, the locals went out, raided the island, and they found his pet goat that he used to sustain himself with. The locals brought the goat ashore to Skerries here, slaughtered it and ate it. Now Patrick was very upset, very, very cross indeed. So it's reputed that he put a curse on all the Skerries men, that all their daughters would grow beards and all their men folk would bleat like goats. So if you went into a pub close by here about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, you'd hear the Skerries men talking, as we say, shite here, talking rubbish, so bleating like goats. And of course, one of the greatest breakouts of new shops in Skerries has been the waxing parlour. So that's the legend. So I think I'll go into preparing the pork now. I've chosen the pork tenderloin, which is the pork fillet, and very often there's a piece of grizzle which I've just taken off here. So it's very important that you take that off. It's a filleting knife, just slit in under it and pull it. So I'm going to cut them into 3 medallions now, like this, and there will be a bit of a banging noise now as I put a piece of plastic just down and just bash these out into a shape. So I hope that's not too severe. It's one done. So it's just to make them into medallions so that they'll cook actually pretty quickly. Now I've used some rapeseed oil and I'm putting a little knob of butter into a hot pan. Again, you wouldn't get into a cold bath, so you'd never get into put anything into a cold pan. I'm just going to season that with a little salt and pepper. These are the fillets that we're going to cook. And a little salt. And then we're ready to go. And we get a good caramelization on one side or the other.
Terry, you're cooking on gas, I'm assuming, are you?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
I favour gas, although upstairs in my own apartment I have electricity. But I prefer gas because it's a flame, really. And I can control the flame much easier. So now, here we are. So I'm just going to arrange these on a plate and just let them rest. So now I'm making it with a little blue cheese sauce. This is all fairly quick now. So we'll just add that to it. And now for the drama. Patrick would have known about wine and drinkable wine, but this is going to flame up now. So provided we don't burn the house down. But there we go. That's why I have a white beard. That's asbestos. So we're just going to let that render in now. You see it's just cooking into and melting the cheese. So now we have a little cream. We can add that to it. I usually use double cream. Now we take that off the heat. Now, I'm going to start with our accompaniment now. We're going to do the little pasta and seaweed. just to go with it.
Can you tell us what seaweed you're using, Terry?
So now this is a green seaweed that's almost, we call it sea lettuce, but it grows all along the shore here in the summertime. It's very easy to just take up. And I haven't even blanched it off. And I've just used a tagliatelle pasta, which is familiar to everybody. So this is the green seaweed. We won't put it all in, we just put a bit in. And then it's like a spaghetti seaweed. It's bootlace seaweed. And it kind of grows up from the bottom and comes up. You'd be very afraid of it if you were swimming around that you get caught in the seaweed. But it's actually very good, very edible. Now, just going to add a little bit more port wine here just to get this going again. We're almost there now. So most cooking is fairly quick, really.
Terry, is this one of your favorite dishes to prepare?
It is. It's a very quick dish. And I don't like waiting for hours for anything.
What's the secret to this dish? Because you make cooking look really easy, but for the rest of us mere mortals, we need the secret sauce. So what makes it easy?
I think just the speed of it, and it's kind of the way I think about food anyway, is quickly. You know, I don't like anything that's cooked for hours and hours, although over the winter time, we would do stews and that. And that's just with the little bit of the seaweed now. And now we're ready for just a little parsley. This is a broadleaf parsley. Now, there we are. There's St. Patrick's tenderloin of pork.
Nice.
With tagliatelle and seaweed, wild seaweed grown on the shore. Everything that Patrick would have had available to him. Oh, but the book is all like that. It's all fairly quick recipes and easy to produce, not hours and hours, because Patrick would have spent hours and hours praying and very little time eating.
What would you use as an accompaniment?
Well, there's an apple and plum compote, which really is from this time of the year. I'm sure even in America, it's the harvest time now.
Yes.
For plums and cooking apples, and to try and use as little sugar as possible. We just peel the apples, core them, chop them up, and take the plum, the seed out of the plum, and just pour it all in the pot. And about 20 minutes later, just boil it up. Maybe half cover it with water, and maybe a cup of sugar. But what we try to use here is a carrageen moss seaweed. Now, I think you could actually get that in America. It probably is exported, but I'm not really sure it is. But it will actually, it's very gelatinous and will actually thicken without adding any flavor or subtracting any flavor from it. And it's lovely on your porridge in the morning, but it actually, apple will cut the sort of semi-fat in the pork. So it'll be very good with that as well. So of course we didn't have potato with this dish. And normally in Ireland now we would eat some nice floury potatoes with it, but we had to wait until you Americans sent Walter Raleigh back to Ireland with the potatoes before we ever made them famous. And then look how famous we made them once we got our hands on them. We actually have a St. Patrick's ale, and the recipe's in the book for it. So that's the perfect accompaniment. I just knocked the top off it now. So it's an IPA, which I think goes for St. Patrick. So there we are. Cheers.
Terry, thanks a million for demonstrating it and making that dish look so easy, as you do with everything. I suppose in the book, Terry, there are 60 recipes. There's something for everybody. There's some that are more sophisticated than others. There's some that are quick and easy like that. There's some really unusual recipes in the book, and one that we've done that people are really interested in is the wild garlic and nettle soup. Can you tell us about that as a combination? Because it sounds, if I told my kids what they were actually eating, there's no chance they would eat it. But can you tell us maybe a little bit of the background to that recipe?
Yeah. Well, nettles in the springtime here, when they're young, are said to have a lot of iron in them. Well, they do have an iron, because if you were to cook them off and just eat them, your teeth would absolutely be dry. Now, iron is very good for cleansing the blood. So there was an old thing, eat nettles in the springtime and it'll purge the blood of winter's worst excesses. So what you do is you just get the leaves off the nettles, take a pair of rubber gloves with you and a plastic bag, and just pull the leaves off. And the new shoots of the nettles, that's the ones you want to take. And then just say have about a pint of chicken stock and a bag or a clump of nettles. Just boil the chicken stock, bring it up to a simmer, put the nettles into it, cook the nettles for about half a minute, take them out, drain them, put them into a liquidizer, and then back into the chicken stock. It's as easy as that.
Sure.
But the watercress, nettles, and you could actually use the watercress as well, could be used. But the nettles are particularly good, full of iron.
Yes.
Very,
So
very
you make it sound really easy. For us mere mortals, all of these instructions are in the book, both from the garlic and nettle soup recipes to the stocks as well, because there's a section in the book, Terry, where you pass on your 50 years worth of knowledge and training. But there's lots of kind of chef's tricks in the book as well. And there's a section on stocks. There's a section on, what's in your herb garden, how to forage for seasonal things at seasonal times of the year. So there really is there's a half century worth of your knowledge, and then a millennium of Irish cooking knowledge has gone into the research for this book. And I didn't prepare this with you, Terry, so I'm really going to put you on the spot now. But what is your favorite recipe out of the book?
I think the hake with the horseradish sauce, because the horseradish, the raw horseradish, there was a big country house up here called Canure House, which actually starred in a movie called 10 Little Indians. It was an Agatha Christie book with Dali Lavi. But up there they had a walled garden, and when the house was being pulled down, I remember going up and finding the horseradish. So I went home and got a fork and dug up the roots. So I had the horseradish here. And if you grated the horseradish, it made a lovely, very tangy sauce, which cut the richness of the hake. The hake is quite sweet. So it's a lovely dish, and it's in the book as well.
What we've tried to do all the time is, I suppose, stay true to the accepted story of St. Patrick, because the truth is that when we started researching this book, we reached out to several historians, and there's a guy that we all know from our locality who is a very well-renowned Irish historian called Peter Harbison. And I said, Peter, we're going to write a cookbook about St. Patrick and the food from St. Patrick's time. What can you tell me, or what would you recommend that we do? And he said two things. He said, go and talk to Dr. Tim Campbell. He knows more about St. Patrick than anybody else in Ireland, so we did that. And he also said, Joe, what you need to realize about St. Patrick is the following. Everything that's been written down about St. Patrick was written down starting from 200 years after his period in Ireland. So a lot is open to interpretation, a lot is open to artistic license. it is generally accepted that there was, you know, a Patrick or Patrick's, or this Christianity happened in Ireland. And the, you know, the great thing about St. Patrick is that he transcends all the religions here. He is neither Catholic nor Protestant nor claimed by one or the other, and he has, you know, survived the test of time for a long period. So I suppose the point that I'm kind of really trying to make here is that, you know, and we say it in the book as well, that everything that is written down about St. Patrick, including by ourselves, you need to take with a little pinch of salt. And what we try to do is we try to keep in the spirit of St. Patrick, which was about, you know, sharing and caring and being kind to your neighbours and doing all those things that, you know, it's not just about Christianity. It's about trying to be a good person and living a simple life. And, you know, I think the philosophy has hopefully carried forward in the book as well, because, you know, some of the dishes are, yes, they're quite sophisticated, but fundamentally, one of the rules that we had when we were writing the book is that, okay, we need to be able to go to our local supermarket and get the ingredients for this, because if it's too obscure, well, it's not of use to people. And in the same way that, Neville, you just asked Terry, okay, so if you didn't have hake, what would you substitute it for? Is cod. And I've noticed that with Terry and all the great chefs, that, okay, the recipe might say X, Y, and Z, but they'll add something, or they'll take something away, or they'll say, oh, the hake doesn't look good today, so I'll use the cod. And that's where the skill comes. And I think that's where the experience comes for hopefully amateur chefs as well, that they can look at one of the recipes and they can say, okay, I've got all of those things, but I don't have that. So what could I use instead of that? And that's the enjoyment, and that's the fun out of cooking.
Sure. Yeah.
You can imagine in the 500, year 500, when Patrick was traversing Ireland. Now, there would have been no roads, or there would have been very meagre trails. So he probably did a lot of his traveling by sea, but when he went inland then, he would have expended a lot of energy traversing Ireland. And every few 20 miles, he would have come across a new chieftain or a new barony or some man who was in charge of the area. And the chief would have invited Patrick to dinner on one evening. And then Patrick would have said, oh, Jesus, that was pretty hard going, eating that boiled food, because in those days they used to dig a pit, we understand, and heat up rocks, and then they'd throw a deer in or a sheep in or a pig in, and they'd throw the rocks in on top of that, and then loads of water, and it would literally boil it up, and then they'd eat big hunks of this, tear it off with their mouth. So Patrick wouldn't have been too impressed, so he probably would have said something like, that's grand dinner now, chief, you wouldn't mind if I did the cooking tomorrow night. So he would have had probably some spices from Italy and the Orient, because the Chinese and that, they had taught the Italians to make pasta. And he would have had garlic, and he would have known how to use lemons and oranges and grapes and stuff like that. So Patrick, sophisticated dinners.
On the Roman influence, during the research on the book, we came across what essentially was a shopping list from around Hadrian's Wall. And Hadrian's Wall was a wall that was built by the Romans between Scotland and England. And we came across a shopping list that was given by one of the garrisons, one of the Roman garrisons that was stationed there. And it was from actually the 1st century, so 3 or 4 centuries before St. Patrick's time. And when we looked at the ingredients on it and the requests that the soldiers had, we could have taken that list to our local supermarket and gotten almost everything, or certainly substituted whatever they were looking for modern day food. So I suppose the point is that, you know, the things that we eat, you know, the way we eat them has changed, all right, but the kind of core substances and the base substances that are there, and there's a real move towards, you know, healthy eating, and a real consciousness towards healthy eating. And I would observe, Terry, that that's probably the biggest change that's happened in food in Ireland. In, you know, you were a pioneer during, you know, your kind of early career in being creative with food, because Neville, you will remember this growing up in Ireland. You know, certainly the Ireland that I grew up in, food was something that you did to give you energy to do work. It wasn't particularly something that was, sort of dwelt over or enjoyed or whatever. But Terry, you kind of pioneered some of that movement, and
we're trying to influence younger chefs now to kind of take that mantle forward. Because if you think of all the preserved foods we have, if you read the packets, there will be a derivative of saltpeter. And saltpeter is actually gunpowder. Now, you wouldn't eat saltpeter close to the fire, you'd lose your teeth. There'd be a big explosion.
Yeah.
So we've tried to thicken the jams or preserve the life of the jams using carrageen moss, which is a seaweed.
Right.
So there's an ethos to the book as well, which is healthy. And that's an important, it's kind of part of a movement to get people to think, there's an ethos behind it.
Yeah, no, it's great. So the book overall, I can say we've been selling the book here since, last quarter of 19. And we've had a very good reaction to it. Done a few of the dishes in the pub. Actually, we're going to work on the Loch Derg brown bread. We have a really good brown bread here that we make in the pub that we actually got from a recipe from the Life Force Mill in Cavan. But we're going to add, morph it up a wee bit and take a shot at making your Loch
the
Derg.
whole grain, the whole meal flour there. You can.
We make it. We make it ourselves.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, we blend a bunch of stuff together, and actually we have it as a mix that we sell thousands of bags of it a year.
Wow.
And it makes the same bread that we have in the restaurant here. But we're going to take a shot. We're going to take a shot at the Loch Derg. So, the book is great. We are going to offer a special deal to our customers for the next 10 days or so. We're going to actually make the price of the book $19.95. It's normally $24.95 or $26.95. So we're going to offer it. And of course, it's as the boys said, it's a great book. It's got a lot of great content, and the pictures are fabulous. The story is really, really good. And from the wild garlic and nettle soup to the pork tenderloins to the early summer rhubarb and the Isle of Man Queenie scallops, lots of great. We've made a few of them ourselves already, so can highly recommend the book. And thank you very much for taking the time to do it with us. Terry and Joe, thank you. Look forward to seeing you soon on the other side of the pond, and stay well.
Absolutely, our pleasure, and good luck to everybody. I hope we have a breakthrough with this pandemic soon. I think we all deserve it.